Hello, welcome back to another episode of the Shellda Podcast. My name is Dan Shelley, a professional paintball photographer. And in this episode, I sit down with the legend, Gerald Garcia, who used to play for Bob Long's Oakland Assassins back in the day. People used to know him as the 187 killer. And in this episode, Gerald opens up on the reason why he suddenly retired from paintball that not many people know about. This is definitely an episode you're not going to want to miss. So let's jump right into it.
Photographer of the Year, let's hear it for Dan Shelley, Shellda Photos.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Shellda Podcast, where today I'm joined by just an absolute legend of the game. I think people have been around paintball for a hot minute will know Gerald Garcia has just a resume of just incredible accomplishments in the sport, which we are totally going to dive into. Gerald, first of all, how are you today?
I'm doing pretty good, man. Life is good. Sun's out, and it's a Monday, and I'm getting to have a really cool conversation with you.
Yeah, I'm so looking forward to this. You know, I think for people that don't know but listen to the show regularly, usually when I'm having guests on, like we'll go back and forth through DMs or texting a little bit just to kind of sync up on schedules and, kind of lock down some questions because I always want to give you, the guests, the space to talk about what you want to talk about. And when you and I were going back and forth, I was like, wow, like Gerald, just you're going to show a whole side of yourself that I don't think people are going to realize they've ever seen. So before we dive in too far, I've got two sponsors that have been with me since day one. And, paintball is all about family and a community.
Sure.
My goodness, BFP gear has just been such a big part of my success and my family since I started not only the podcast, just the photography journey too. So to be partnered with a brand like them, they are just exploding, and they have exploded onto the paintball scene. But man, like, in Tampa, they were one of the featured sponsors of both Dynasty and Paintball Fit. So like to have both sponsors in the finals, crazy. So it's awesome being part of the BFP Gear family. And then really and then second, Hormesis. I'm rocking one of their shirts that they have. Every morning I look at my closet, I'm like, it's all Hormesis, it's Project, it's JT, all the cool brands, and I typically grab for something Hormesis. It just stands out, and you've got that Project hoodie on. It's one of my favorites as well. So let's jump into it. I have two quick stories that I want to talk about. You and I met at USXBL, but before that, you're obviously not going to know this, and I didn't know it until we interacted, but I was like, I've seen you somewhere before and I couldn't put my finger on it. And so prepping for the show, I did a ton of research and I finally figured out where I saw you before. 2006, Mohegan Sun in Connecticut, there was the Smart Parts tournament.
Yeah.
I was 14, 15-year-old kid standing in the pit box of Dynasty, and I think I jumped over to your pit at some point. And that was the first time, I'm sure I said hi to you or something, or gave you like a fist bump.
Yeah.
Crazy.
That's cool. That is crazy. That was a really, that was a cool event.
Yeah.
I think it was filmed very nicely. That was a really special event. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Small world.
Crazy, right? Real small world. And then, almost 20 some odd years later, we had USXBL here in Texas a few weeks ago. And I had seen you around, like I saw when JT posted the whole like Oakland Assassins jersey, and you were posting stuff, but we had never interacted. And you came up to me and you introduced yourself. Do you want to talk about that interaction?
Sure. I remember seeing one of your podcasts. So like, I'm still pretty new on coming back. I've watched a few podcasts, and yours happened. I was painting one day at the studio, and I was just putting something on the background, and I heard one of your podcasts, and I found myself kind of like stopping and really listening to it. And it was different because I don't even know if I can cuss on here, but
go for it.
I really felt like you gave a shit. And you were talking about some some real things that I really appreciated. And, I wanted to make a point that if I ever saw you somewhere, I wanted to give you your roses, because I think what you're doing here for a lot of people is something very special, um, that a lot of people need, right?
Man, thank you for sharing that. Because when you came up to me, I think like a lot of, I'll call it a fan, like a lot of fans would have in that moment where, man, I looked up to this guy when I was a kid. Like, I've seen you in magazines, I watched you on the videos, and now I have a conversation where you're approaching me. Like, I
Sure.
went through that so quick. And then I went back to like, oh shit, like this person, like I am impacting this person. It was just such like a mind like fuck for me, honestly. And then you and I had a good 10-minute conversation about just life and some of the things that you went through and how a platform like this, we've needed it in the sport for so long. And so, yeah, that moment for me was really deeply impactful that you took the time out of your tournament to come up and talk to me. So I'm really thankful for that.
Oh, sure, man. Well, I think that's like what really attracted me to this, right? Like you just mentioned the word fan, and I think for a lot of paintball players, they look at, I'm not saying me, but even today's top level players, and they put them on such a pedestal. But what you're doing is like humanizing these people, right? Like you could be
Yeah.
at the top of your game, and let's face it, we're playing paintball. We're not like curing cancer or anything like that, but like these guys have problems too.
Yeah.
And I think you normalizing and really just getting into the nuts and bolts on like why that person is the way he is very special. And when I approached you, it was just as important for me as it probably was for you, because I'm really big on giving people their roses when they actually tend to, lack of a better word, give a shit about other humans. I think our world kind of lacks that a little bit these days.
Yeah, it so does. I think you're spot on. Like the way technology is going, and we're going away from human connections, right? And so, like those moments that you had where you're giving somebody their roses or wanting to make sure you take the time to thank somebody, I think we're seeing less of that. When in
Sure,
reality, we're craving it probably more than what we ever have.
sure. Yeah. Sometimes telling somebody thank you to their face, an emoji is not going to be able to cover that. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
yeah. So I think it's very important to give people their roses. So thank you
yeah.
for having that conversation with me at USXBL, and thank you for taking your roses.
Yeah, it's something, for people that have been listening for a while, it's something that I'm working on. I've said, I don't think suffer is the right word. I deal with a lot of like imposter syndrome, where like I have a lot of self-doubt in like the work that I'm doing, or like even with the photography stuff. And I had a really deep conversation with my wife and Ryan Gray at the Summit Awards. And my wife has been telling me this the whole entire time, like, hey, like, you got to believe in yourself. And Ryan said it, and I'm looking at both of them, and they're both kind of giving me that look of like, yeah, like this is you. And so it's kind of like an oh shit moment where like, man, I really need to do some like deep self work to believe in myself. Because if I don't, like all these moments I'm gonna miss.
Ye-
And then from that, that's almost like a compound, right? Like from that, I realized that I wasn't receiving from people. Like if someone's like, hey, congratulations, or like you earned this, I would just immediately dismiss it. Like, yeah,
Like
thanks, but
downplay it a little bit,
100%,
Yeah, yeah.
100%.
I think that's probably the artist in you.
Yeah.
I'm obviously surrounded by tons of artists, and I think a lot of us, me included, have that, imposter syndrome type thing. And I didn't realize how bad I was with that until like one day my MMA coach, I was in the cage sparring with somebody, and he complimented me on something, and I kind of downplayed it, yeah, but I let him shoot at my leg and blah, blah. And he was like, why don't you just shut up and take the compliment? And for whatever reason, that really resonated with me. I was like, I'm really bad about that. I need to appreciate some of the things that I do for myself a little bit better.
Yeah. And when you, so like now that you're kind of past that stage, do you notice you're enjoying more moments of pride for yourself because you're receiving those?
Oh, sure. Yeah. When you finally, accept that you're worth those compliments, then you truly appreciate yourself a little bit more,
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. It's definitely helped me with my process.
That's well, after having this conversation with you and having it multiple times with my wife and, Coach Ryan, that's something I definitely need to do a better job of. So thank you for reiterating what they've been saying for a while.
And Ryan's no bullshitter either.
He's not.
He's going to tell you straight. He's been a very good friend of mine for a long, long time. We used to live a block away from each other. So I've spent a lot of time with Ryan. He was a big part of my life for a long time.
Yeah, and he came into my life when he started to coach the Notorious Pro team. I think it's kind of like you and I in a way, right? Where like we had a single conversation and I think we just felt something there. Like, man, like we respect the other person or there's had some type of connection. And he and I have been close ever since. And he's the type of person where I look at him and like, wow, this guy's like, he's a man's man. He's built, he's super strong, he's fit. But that guy's, he shows his emotions. he shows that it's okay to cry. He taught me it's okay to say I love you to another man.
Sure.
So yeah, he's an incredible person. I'm glad he's impacted you in the same way.
Sure. I definitely agree. He's a good guy, special guy.
Hey, I want to dive into some things that we talked about at USXBL. But I think for a lot of my listeners, I think are 30 plus in the year old. So I think a lot of people are going to know you and some of the teams that you played for. But for some of the younger folks who are listening in who may not know back to the PSP and MPPL days, run me through like your top 3 teams.
So let's see. I started off with Texas Storm. I think would probably be like my first. I was involved in a couple of teams. I owned a team, or not owned. That's ridiculous to say. I started a team called Texas Havoc back in the day, but I think I really got my start with Texas Storm. And then from Texas Storm, I went to Bob Long's Ironman, which was Oakland Assassins.
Legendary
Stayed there
team.
for a few years. Oh yeah, I mean, just I can't say enough good things about Bob Long. That guy's impacted my life in so many different ways. And then from Bob Long's team, I went to the Philadelphia Americans. From there, spent a good amount of years with them. And after the Americans in 2007, I decided to reunite with Bob. And at the time, Bob Long and Gary Shouse, who had Legacy, combined both teams together. And I played for Legacy with Bob Long and Gary Shouse and a bunch of my old teammates. And that was 2007. And that was the last year I played pro.
Wow. Talk about like some storybook teams. Like some people get to the pros and only play for one legendary team, but to play for Bob under the Assassins and Philly Americans, like I remember those old rosters were just stacked with legendary names. People are still playing today too, which is crazy.
Yeah, I mean, and the weird thing about that is at the time I was playing for, let's start off with Bob Long. It's weird for people to even consider a lot of people that played on that roster to be legends or OGs, or because at the time when we were doing it, we were just players. We were just pro players just playing. We didn't know what the end result or what people were going to think about us, after our paintball careers were over. So it's really weird to even hear it now, because at the time we were just grinding, man.
Yeah. I think I hear that a lot And like, it's a love hate for me. Like, I hear that a lot from the paintball fit guys, where I think one of their mottos is keep struggling. And like, they don't enjoy moments. They don't, not they don't enjoy it, but like, yes, we won, on to the next thing. And, I actually put some pressure on Scott Stewart of Fit last few weeks ago. I was like, hey, it's like, take a moment, man. Like, enjoy this. Like, you've got an incredible thing going.
Sure.
And I think sometimes we get so locked in that it goes by like that. And you're like, wow, where did this career go? And then it turns into conversations like this where you're looking back 20 years. And I think sometimes people regret not being more present in those moments.
Yeah, it's funny that you said something to Scott, because at the USXBL, I ran into Colt, and he was sitting on the stairs, all broken in his crutches, looking all sad. And I congratulated him for their Tampa win. And I was like, man, you guys got to enjoy that, right? Like, I played on Oakland, and the first year of NXL, which was 2003, I was playing on Oakland. We went undefeated the entire season, except for the finals. We lost to the Philadelphia Americans. But the lesson I learned after I left paintball from playing with Bob is like, Bob was the same way. We won something, we played great, undefeated, cool, celebrate it for the rest of the night, but tomorrow we got to lock in on the next one. So I never really got to appreciate those victories or wins or anything like that. And I understand Bob wanted it to be a normality to be a winner. I understand that now. But yeah, I did give that advice to Colt. I said, what you guys are doing or what you did, that's hard. Yeah. That's really hard. So make sure that you are enjoying those moments, because one day all of this is going to be gone. And you might regret it. I mean, that's some of my biggest regrets in paintball, is like not enjoying the W's, right?
Yeah. Yeah. That's life advice in general, right? Like, whether it's paintball or not, try to soak in the moment and enjoy it as much as you possibly can. Cause obviously Colt's going to come back and he's going to, have an incredible career, but like, if an injury like that happens, you never know when the last time you're going to step foot on the field is.
That's very true.
I had a local friend here who I've seen at the field a lot the past few years. His name is Andrew. He's a great guy. Like, I connect with him. We both work in similar careers. And I just saw, like, on Facebook, he posted, hey, I'm selling whatever his market was because I'm getting out of the sport. And like, I read it. I'm like, man, if I had known the last time that he was playing paintball, like, whether I was there or I was taking a picture or not, like, I would have had a completely different conversation with him. But you never know when that last time is going to be.
Yeah, it's very true.
Yeah.
It's so true, man.
Speaking of one of the last times when you and I were chatting at USXBL, you had mentioned, I think you had retired abruptly. Was it 2007?
2007.
And I think a lot of people don't actually know the true reason why you retired.
Yeah, that was the one thing I did immediately realize when I started playing paintball again, having conversations with people, is nobody really knew why I stopped playing paintball, right? Because I heard a lot of like, man, I don't think you were too old. Like, I think you had a few more years left in you. I was like, dude, I was 33. I was at the top of my game, I felt like, when I retired. But the reason I retired, so the last tournament I played with Legacy was 2007 Chicago NXL. And the very last pro game that I played was the All-Star game at Chicago. Wow. But prior to that, I want to say it was like, it's been a long time ago, so I want to say it was like 2 to 3 weeks before that. I'm going to try to say this without getting emotional.
No, it's okay.
My wife got diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. And anybody that's ever been in my life or has met my wonderful wife knows that, like, she is it for me, right? Like, we've been together since we were 14. I'm 50 now. We're going to celebrate our 36-year anniversary this year.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And, but yeah, we had just heard the news. Like, there was a process of about 6 months. We're trying to figure out what exactly was wrong with her. And then it was like a few weeks before Chicago, we got the news that she did have multiple sclerosis. So I kind of went through this like, oh man, you know, I didn't really know much about the disease or like what I was in for. But I knew our life was about to change a little bit, or maybe a lot. And I remember going into Chicago thinking about, you know, just having that on my mind and like, what do I do? Do I stop playing paintball? Because I really loved playing paintball. And at that point, I felt like I was at the very top of my game. I was playing really, really well. You know, the teams I was playing for seemed to think that I was helping quite a bit. And then, funny enough, earlier you mentioned, you know, injuries happening to people. Is at Chicago during the All-Star game, I slid into a bunker, and it had rained a little bit in Chicago, so the ground was a little sticky. But when I put my hand down to slide, my thumb caught the mud and it bent all the way back, and I severed my tendon that holds your thumb to your hand. So it's like the equivalent of your Achilles for your hand. I didn't know how badly injured that was, because I remember like sliding in and feeling it go back, and I was like, man, this sucks. This hurts. And I remember I was in a back corner and I just took off down the field and I bunkered like one guy. I get shot. I run straight to the pit. I drop my gun. I said, somebody grab me air, please. And I ran straight to the medic tent, which was right behind our pits. And I asked them, do you have a wrap? They gave me a wrap, and I wrapped it really quick, ran back, and I was in for the next point. Like, never even thought about it. A week later, I'm already home, and my thumb was still kind of hurting. I went to the doctor's office finally. My wife's like, you got to go to the doctor. I'm like, all right, you're probably right. So I go, and then they told me about that. And then they said, we need to get you in surgery like tomorrow, because it's already been a week. We got to put it together. So I had to have surgery, and I was... with that, I didn't have to make a decision. Am I going to leave paintball for a little bit? I kind of didn't have a choice. I was going to be out for a while. You know, so I had to have the surgery and all of that. And through the surgery, I realized that was kind of God's way of telling me that you've got some other things that you need to take care of right now, and paintball's not it. You know, and I ended up calling Gary and Bob and telling them like, hey, you know, I'm injured. That hand injury I had in Chicago was worse than I thought. I'm having surgery, and they said I'm going to be out for about 5 months easily. And I realize now I never really told them why. The real reason, I just like never came back. But through all that, you know, there was a lot of emotional drain that I didn't realize was happening as well. You know, I'm trying to figure out what's going on with my wife. You know, I remember like calling my mom after Chicago, and I meant to tell her two things. One, that I was going to have a surgery, and two, that I was going to break the news that my wife has multiple sclerosis. And I told her about my wife first, and I still remember where I was. I was in my bathroom, kind of pacing back and forth. And when I told my mom, I just like broke down crying, man. I was like grown man, like snot coming out of my nose, crying. Like, I don't know what I'm going to do. Like, she's the most important person in my life, you know, blah, 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 blah. And I think that's the last time I actually ever cried to my wife. To my mom. And that just kind of started this whole like emotional journey. And paintball just kind of was, I think even for me, it's kind of like I just put it to the side immediately. I don't even remember it being a big deal to me at the time that I was thinking I'm probably never going to play paintball again. I just got laser focused on my wife, my family, and what needs to happen now. So that's kind of led for me to retire. Yeah, and since then I never came back to paintball. I take that back. In 2008, I ended up playing one NPPL event with Bad Company because they were trying to win their pro spot or keep their pro spot or something like that in the NPPL. And then I ended up playing, but I wasn't really there. My mind was checked out. And that's when I knew paintball wasn't really it for me, at the time. So I kind of left that alone. And there was like a lot of anger that unpacked after that too, that stemmed from paintball as well. I don't know if you want me to get into that, but
yeah, totally. Well, I mean, first and foremost, thank you for opening up and sharing that. That's like that, man, what I would consider probably a month of events, right? Where like you get that news and then 2 weeks later you are now flying to Chicago, which I'm assuming was away from your wife.
Sure.
And then like you're going through the event, you're probably not fully present playing because you're thinking and worried about her.
Yeah.
And then to have that injury and then to step away, but not to step away for the real reason, like the injury kind of took light of that, right? Which like forced those conversations to not say, hey, I'm stepping away because my wife has this. It's, hey, I'm stepping away because my thumb.
Right.
It almost is a form of like burying that real reason. And I'm sure that comes out at some point later, right? Whether it's anger, sadness, frustration.
Sure. It was 100% denial. I remember like not even wanting to tell people about it, about my wife, not because I was hiding it. I think now I know it's one, I didn't really want to face it yet.
Yeah.
And two, I knew people were going to have questions and I didn't even have the answers. And I couldn't even talk about it without like breaking down, so I just kind of avoided all that and just kind of swept it all under the rug for a little bit.
Yeah. I think a lot of people go through that with whatever it is, whatever the event, life-changing event is in their life. I went through that with my mom. I lost her 2 years ago now, I think.
Oh man, I'm sorry to hear that.
I appreciate that. It was right before World Cup, literally like weeks before. It was my first World Cup ever, right? And like that was the year I was doing the Dynasty Children's book. It was coming out World Cup, so like everything was like leading up to this moment. And I remember getting the call from my uncle, let me know that, hey, it wasn't looking good. And I was at work, I was in my office, and I was like, man, how do I tell people this? Like, how do I didn't even process it yet. And so like, how do I tell other people? And so I remember what you're saying is when I finally did, I just broke down. Like that was kind of that release that comes out of, I'm holding this stuff and I'm sorry, but you're about to wear it.
Yeah.
How did you go through? Because, I think for paintball, for me, and I imagine for you at that time was your identity. Like everyone knew you for paintball. Yeah. How did you go through that identity crisis of like, hey, I am now not a professional paintball player. Like my life has completely changed.
I don't know that I handled it very well because you're right. At the time, paintball was my identity. I owned a paintball store. I was running the largest at the time tournament series in Texas. Everything was about paintball. I had the Smart Parts Factory team, which was the B-Slap team that became the Smart Parts Factory team. So those guys were all very important to me. And that roster consists of a lot of people that are still around today. Ryan Brand was the first person that I ever picked up for the B-Slap team, which is kind of weird because now I'm full circle and I'm wearing his stuff now. And
so cool.
And I'm a sponsored player by, this 14-year-old kid that I picked up at the ref a long time ago. Grayson Goff was on that roster. Sean Salcedo, Rory McQuality, and Jell Stewart.
Wow.
Man, there were some hosses on that team. I'm forgetting a bunch of people, but yeah, that team, I think we produced like 8 players went pro one year. And that's how, that team kind of dissolved. And that all kind of happened in 2007 also. So it was kind of a snowball. But anyway, what I was saying is I don't think I handled it very well. I actually kind of took out that MS thing on paintball, I think, because I remember I was just a really angry dude at that time, right? Like all this is happening to me. I had a lot of like moments where I was like talking to God, like why me? Why Silvana? Like, what did she do? She's like one of the nicest people in the world. Like, why would you give that to her? But like the anger that I really had that with paintball is I just remember nobody checked on me. Like nobody really cared. Like even if nobody knew about the MS thing, which some people did know, even like for my hand, the surgery, nobody checked on me. How did the surgery go? How's therapy going? I remember even thinking like having a lot of anger towards, and none of them even know this, towards like the Smart Parts Factory team guys, right? Like I've had all of these guys since they were 14 years old. And the year that I left is the year everybody pretty much turned pro. And in my mind at that time, I don't feel that way now. I was like, man, even these kids, they just like, I got them to where they needed to be. And now they're playing pro and they're just doing them now. Nobody ever cared. And it's like my wife housed all these kids, fed all these kids. And yeah, I just don't think I handled all of that very well. And I was already a pretty angry dude back then. But I just remember being like really hurt by a lot of people who I thought were like my paintball family, and that like nobody really ever checked on me. So
I think what you're describing is very normal. I think for a lot of people that go through something like that, where whether it's surgery on whatever level it is, or if you lose a loved one and people aren't checking in on you, which you would consider like your true friends, it builds up a lot of that anger and resentment.
sure.
That's so normal. How did you process all of that? That's a lot to deal with.
I don't know that I processed it very well. It took a lot of years for me to actually get right with myself. And I think through that, I did a lot of just trying to process things. And I became very depressed because it's just like a big life change. And I think the only thing that really saved me at the time is because I was so bitter at paintball, because like I dedicated so much of my life, so much time away from my family to play this sport. And then, at the time I felt kind of hurt that nobody really cared. I like got rid of my paintball store and like stopped the tournament series. I just stopped everything. And I think the only thing that really kept me sane is that's also the same year I started my tattoo career. I took on an apprenticeship with this artist that was tattooing me a lot. And I would draw a lot of my own tattoos and give it to him. And then I talked about, I grew up in LA. And like, that's what all the homies did. We tattooed each other they tattooed each other, but like, I could never be a part of that. And I've always wanted to do it. I've always been really good at drawing. And because I started that era of my life, I think that's really the only thing that kind of like got my mind off of the paintball journey. But it did like, I don't even know if it was healthy, right? Like it was just a distraction because I really don't remember even thinking about paintball at all. Like anything past 2008, I have no clue what happened in paintball.
You just completely shut it off. It sounds like it's, I think what you hear people that are going through, I don't want to just say it's depression, but they're going through something, and depression's one of them, is they just bury all of the feelings and all of the thoughts, and you kind of just shut it off completely.
Yeah. I'm really good at that. Or I was really good at that time, and didn't realize how much damage I was doing to myself, but also I was in a fight or flight situation. I was still like, it took years and years and years for us to kind of get my wife, stabilized and kind of figured out, what needed to happen to get her right. So.
Can you, if you're okay, I would love to learn more about that. I think a lot of people that are listening are going to resonate with this story so much because they either have a loved one or somebody they know that is going through health battles. And I think a lot of times the loved one in the situation, like you yourself, you put your whole entire life aside to be there for that person. And when that happens, you lose your identity, you lose so much about yourself, and the self-care goes away. I think that's where you hear a lot of the airplane analogy, hey, you got to mask up first and make sure you're okay before you help somebody else. What advice would you give to people going through something similar?
To not do what I did, which was put a lot of self-blame, right? And a lot of that self-blame was geared towards paintball. Because I remember feeling very selfish. Part of dealing with my wife being diagnosed with MS was realizing, all the signs were there, but I was just so caught up in my own stuff that how did I not see it coming, or how was I not more helpful? At the time, the pro leagues at that time was different, right? We were playing 10 tournaments a year because the PSP was X-Ball and then NPPL was 7-man. And I never played for a Texas team, or I was playing for, either Oakland or Philly. So both of those teams were very practice driven. So you think about 10 tournaments a year that I'm out of town, and then 2 practices before every event. I was just never home, right?
Sure.
And I just felt super selfish, that my wife has never ever given me a hard time about playing paintball. She loved that I found something I was passionate about, and it never stopped me from doing that. But there was one particular memory that I have that I remember I just tortured myself with as an example of how selfish I was. And I remember exactly when it was playing for Philadelphia Americans, and it was at the Pomona event in California, and where everybody knows it was the rain fest. It was probably one of the worst rainy tournaments in California I've ever played. And those are the tournaments my wife would always go with because her family's from California. We're both California natives.
Yeah.
So she would always go. She'd stay with her family, go visit them, and then come watch my games. So the one particular visual that I remember is after the game, we had a great event. I think we'd won both of our games that day. And now the whole team was leaving, and we were in vans, right? But my wife was going back to her parents' house, and her dad, I think, was on his way to pick her up. So it was raining, and I told my wife, I'll stay with you, and then maybe I could, your dad maybe could drop me off at the hotel. And she was like, no, be with your team. This is what you're here for. Your team needs you. Just go. I'll be fine. My dad will be here in a few minutes. I'm like, okay, cool. Love you. Give her a kiss, and give my son a kiss. And then I take off. And I remember leaving. As I'm pulling out, I'm looking at the van window, and my wife and my son were sitting at the front gates waiting for their dad, just getting rained on,
Wow.
But she's waving at me, smiling. And like that visual just like haunted me forever. Like, dude, you're so selfish. Like, you just left your family out there. And yeah, that sucked. Definitely didn't want to get emotional on this, but
I appreciate you opening.
You know?
Yeah, I appreciate you opening up, because I think a lot of people go through similar things. I see it now where at national events, like I see so many spouses that are there supporting their husbands and now supporting their wives in the WNXL. And I think you hear it more so than ever where wives that are there, like they're not allowed to stay at the team house. They're not allowed to stay at the hotel. And like just what that, I can only imagine every individual player and or couple, like what they go through.
Yeah.
I'm sure you're not the only person that has been through that, where you're watching your family like drive away, or as you're driving away.
Yeah. And it was, at the time too, for Oakland and Philly, I was really one of the only ones with a family. I think Oakland had a couple more. Little John had a family. Bob Long, obviously, but most of the Philly guys didn't have families. They were just kind of doing them. So it was really hard to even. I don't know. I think at the time, especially when I first got on Oakland, that was my first pro team. I was just trying to prove myself. So a lot of it, like. And my wife didn't want like the family life to, that's even crazy that she thought that way. She didn't want our family life to like get in the way of what I wanted to do, So yeah, I would just be like all team. When I'm with the team, I'm just 100% there, And real quick story, people ask me all the time why Bob Long is such a legend, and like, we all know why he's a legend in paintball. But in my mind, the reason Bob Long is a legend is because like he actually gave a shit about his players, right? So one of the first, Chicago every year fell on my wife's birthday. Always. Every year I played pro, I've never spent a birthday with my wife. But the first year that I missed her birthday, I remember we're in the pits and I was getting ready. I was putting my gear on and my wife calls me and I answer the phone and she's like, "Oh my God, you were like the sweetest guy ever. Thank you very much for thinking of me." And I'm like, yeah. I'm thinking like I wished her a happy birthday that morning. Maybe that's what she's thinking. She was like, "These are the most beautiful flowers I've ever seen." Like, wait a minute. I didn't send you any flowers. She was like, "Yeah, stop joking. I know these came from you." I said, "No, like, dead ass, I did not send you flowers. Who sent you flowers?" She said, "I just got flowers that says, happy birthday from the Oakland Assassins." Wow. And I look up and I'm looking right at Bob and he's kind of got this smirk on his face. And I go, "Bob, did you send my wife flowers?" And he winks at me and he says, "That's how I keep players. I keep their wives happy." And I was just like,
so true.
That's so dope that he just like, would do stuff like that, And I think every year that I missed her birthday, he would always send her flowers. It was really a cool thing.
That's so cool.
But I kind of got derailed a little bit. Was I supposed to answer your question? But
no, you're doing a great job.
Okay.
Thanks for sharing that little tidbit of Bob. Like that's, I love doing this podcast and listening to others because obviously we get to know you and get into your mind and your heart. But to hear sometimes these little stories that come out, like no one's ever going to know that about Bob,
Yeah.
So it's cool to hear that. And, I think, I don't know what the answer is. Maybe we can somehow produce more Bob Longs, but wives and spouses of paintball players, and I'll even say for media, because I go through this too, they go through so much. Like we're gone so many weekends out of the year. And even if your spouse is like at an event with you, there's not a whole lot for them to do. And so if they're not surrounded by good people, like Bob, it can be a really miserable time.
Yeah.
When Amanda and I go to these events now, like it's not something that she looks forward to, because like you're sitting out in the sun, you're baking all day, and if you're not like a diehard fan of paintball, like it's kind of boring.
Yeah.
But like to your point with Bob, she's found people, there's some folks in like all of Dynasty, like all those guys are so welcoming and open and talking to her. Some of the pit crew, like Steve, there's a few guys like Steve and Patch, like they have their spouses there, and it's people, it all comes back to like people are the reason why people come around and stay around.
Yeah. And to this day, now that I'm, back playing and I'm playing tournaments again, my wife's still in the trenches, man. She's still in the pits with us. She's,
So
cool. And so is my son. He's grown now, but he's, he helps. They show up to almost every event that they can go to. And it's real funny because when I first came back, the very first tournament I played was the Texas NXL event in 2024, last year.
Yeah.
And then the second event I played was, I want to say it was like a USXBL, which was raining. And then it was like the week after that was I played with Aftershock, the ICPL 10-man, which was the mud fest at Cousins. Gosh. And my wife is like, why did you come back to playing paintball? Like, I don't remember paintball being this miserable in weather conditions. And I was like, oh man, you must have forgotten. We've played through a lot of these types of weather. But she's still in the trenches, man. She still supports me every single time. Even when I tell her it's going to be miserable, don't go out there today, she'll just show up. Yeah.
Gosh, it sounds like you've got such an incredible support system. And, you had mentioned that like she's been everything for you. And, doing research into the show, like I was looking at your feed, and it was just, picture after picture of you and your wife together, just like enjoying whatever moment it was. Like I can see it, and I can hear how special she means to you.
Yeah.
She's to you.
She's a boss, man. She's the angel that God sent in my life to keep me alive.
Yeah. Let's say, I hope she does. Let's say she's listening to this. What's something you'd want to say to her?
No mayo on my sandwich. No, I'm kidding. She's going to kill me for that. That she's boo. She's just been everything. Yeah. She's just, I don't want to get, this will definitely make me cry, but she's just been everything. She's the backbone of our family. She put up with my shit when I was in the trenches in my gang days. And she's just a special woman, man. They don't build them like her anymore, for sure. Yeah. Thank you is I guess what I would like to tell her for.
That's beautiful. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, she deserves it. Thank you for giving me a platform to tell her that. Hopefully she sees this.
For sure. We're going to make sure. And if not, I'll clip it out and I'll send it to you so you can send a little portion to her.
No, thank you, man.
I do want to transition to a few more topics, but before I do, I have one other question that I was thinking about, because I think a lot of people go through this thought where, like, if they step away too early, or if they step away for, you for family reasons or for health reasons, that question creeps in of like, what if, what if I stayed, what if I played another few years? Like, what would my career look like? Would I have won more championships? Did you ever go through that process?
I don't remember having those thoughts when I first retired. Maybe more currently.
Yeah.
Now that I've been back and I see some of the guys that, were playing when I was playing, like some of my old teammates, like Ryan Moorhead, still playing. I don't think so. I don't think I've ever been like a what if kind of guy.
Yeah.
I think if anything, if I'm forced to really think about it now, I would probably say, what if I didn't quit paintball?
Wow.
Right? Like, what would my family life look like? What would my wife's health look like? Would I have been able to start the businesses that I've started? Would I have been able to meet other people that were not in the paintball industry, or I would have not met in the paintball industry, that says I've somehow made an impact in their life? I think those are would be the what ifs that I think about. I think everything happens for a reason. And I guess if I was really forced to think about the what if as far as paintball goes, I don't know that things would have been any different. I think, sure, maybe I could have won more things, but I don't know. I think that's a weird question for me to answer. That's probably a question that I'd probably ask you or somebody else. Like, what if? I don't know. What do you think would have happened if I would have stayed in paintball for 25 years, I don't know if I would really have those type of what ifs about paintball.
That's actually, I mean, the way you answer that, I think, is beautiful, though. I don't think have ever thought of it in that light where like, if somebody asked me, hey, what if, my mind instantly goes to well, yeah, here's all the things that I could have done. But you spun it of well, here's all the things I did do because I stepped away from paintball. You're able to, grow your family. You're able to take care of your wife and start your tattoo business, which we're going to dive into. So I actually think you answered that incredibly well.
Oh, well, thank you. It was the honest answer. I think paintball is, the Dynasty guys prove it, right? You can have a very, very long and prosperous career in paintball. And, even guys like Alex and Ryan and Ollie, they've started businesses. Ryan Brand, these guys have started very lucrative businesses that evolved in paintball for being, in it for so long. But I also think there has been a lot of players that just kind of got stuck in that loop of just kind of playing and not really, and having to catch up later on in their life. So I don't know, maybe I think I'm thankful for, the time I had in paintball. And I'm thankful for all the things that I got to accomplish that I probably wouldn't have if I stayed in paintball. And I'm even more thankful and have a lot of gratitude about being able to come back and still play competitive paintball somewhat, at 50 years old. That's not a lot of people can say that.
Yeah, it's incredible what you're doing, and let's transition to that, right? Let's transition to coming back into paintball, because that weekend at USXBL was so powerful for the conversation that we had spoke about earlier. But there was also another gentleman there at the field who, same thing as like you, he came up to me. I've never seen this person before, never met the person, an older gentleman. I would imagine he's probably in his maybe later 50s. And same thing, he's, thanked me for the podcast, and he was just getting back into the sport and how much it resonated with him. And he had mentioned man, I wish I had something like your podcast when I was younger. I wish I had this when I was playing earlier. It would have helped me through hard times.
Sure.
And you had mentioned that as well, as you wish there was something like this when you were playing in your professional career. Talk to me about that. What's the why? Why do you wish you had something like this?
Well, I grew up playing paintball in a different era also, right? It was kind of a more hardened culture back then. Right? The legends, the real legends in my mind were, who were a lot of the older established guys were like Bob Long, Shane Pastana, Chris Lasoya, even the Dynasty guys were just barely coming into their domination. So I probably wouldn't have considered them at the time as like legends, right? But like Brian Benini and Todd Adamson, like these were the dudes that I looked up to. And those just weren't the dudes that were going to just like put their arm around you and be like, tell me about your feelings, man.
Yeah.
You know? But I think it would have been nice to have platforms like this, or somebody to listen to like this, to be able to decipher the different emotions. Because like whether that wasn't really talked about back then, I mean, you still have your emotions at the time, right? Like even handling a loss at that time was just like, yeah, you guys fucking sucked. Like play better, do better, come back better. It wasn't like much more conversations than that, you know? Yeah. And for some people, like taking a loss that's an emotional drain, man. I know it was for me, especially playing for Oakland. You just weren't allowed to lose on Oakland. Or to even like what we talked about earlier, going into Chicago, 2007, with all this like things lingering in my mind, you know, but not having the ability or a person to talk to about like, man, I'm going through this right now. You know, what do I do? Or just like, listen to me. You know, it was more of just like a suck it up, go do your job, go shoot a bunch of dudes, and just then you go home and you deal with real life. You know, I think it made it a lot harder to deal with a lot of things, especially being a family person at the time where, you know, not a lot of people had families to really worry about.
Yeah, it's almost like you're having to live two different personalities, right? Where like you can go
Sure.
home and kind of open up to your wife, but like when you're at the field, like you've got to, what the quote unquote everyone used to say, you have to man up and like kind of bury all that shit.
Sure.
Sucks.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's really true, living a kind of a double life too, right? Because you can't really, like, once you leave the paintball event, nobody else in your regular life really cares as much about paintball as like most, or as like the people in your paintball circle, right? Because you're like, wait, you play professional paintball? Especially back then, like in the early 2000s, it just wasn't really as talked about, you know, probably as it is now. You know, we didn't have YouTube, you know, podcast or anything like that. Everything had to be filmed. It wasn't, you know, paintball or just in general, things aren't as in your face as it is now. So yeah, definitely kind of living a double life is a very good description of it.
Yeah, I think we all go through that in some way, shape, or form. You know, I go through it at work all the time. You know, like at my cube at my desk, I've got, you know, my trophies from winning the photographer awards. I've got the Great American Paintball magazines that got like some photos in it. And people ask like, hey, what's that? And I'll explain it and I'll show them like, oh, that's really cool. And like they just carry on with the next conversation. Like, hold on a second. Like I'm going to these events and like people are asking me for selfies. They're asking me for like, you know, autographs, and my brand is on their shirts. And like, you're just saying it's cool. Like you just don't understand it.
Exactly. Oh, man, I understand. Trust me. Like those flights back, you know, being in the airport, sitting next to somebody that's like, oh, what'd you come to Chicago for? I'm like, oh, I don't want to come.
Here we go.
Here we go, man. I've had this conversation 100 times, you know, and I usually would just make up something. I wouldn't even tell them. I just like, I'm visiting family or something like that. But yeah, I feel that.
Yeah, you know, I started to get to that point where like I would shy away from those conversations. But at some point last year, I was listening to Marcelo on the Play the Game podcast, and he kind of shifted that thought for me, because he was like, whenever somebody says that or asks him, what do I do? He was like, that's now an opportunity for me to be an ambassador of the sport. And even though I've had this conversation 100 or 1,000 times, like this is the first time that person's hearing that conversation. And so that kind of was like, oh, wow, okay, I need to look at those interactions in a completely different light now, because that's an opportunity to potentially get off on the sport.
Sure. That's a very valid point.
Yeah.
Nobody said I was perfect. I don't want to be an ambassador all the time. But yeah, I get that. You know, we want the sport to grow. I mean, we got to talk about it, right?
Yeah. Talk to me about coming back to the field. You know, the first time after all those years away, what was it like, you know, sliding that mask on for the first time and stepping on?
Oh man. So how this all kind of got started is I'm trying to think who to blame first. I'm gonna go with Jeff Munoz. This guy named Jeff hit me up on
Jeff very
Instagram
well.
one day and was like, "Hey, is this the Gerald that used to play for Philly Americans?" I said, "Yes." He's like, "Hey, we're bringing Bunker Fest back. We would love to have you out here. We're giving Mondo and Ryan Gray an award. Maybe you can step in the commentator's box." Talk me into it. So I went just to see Mondo and Ryan, old friends of mine I hadn't seen for a long time. So I went, and it kind of gave me a little bit of a bug. Not that much, just a little bit of a bug. And then had a conversation with Spesh one day from, an old teammate of mine from the All-Americans, and was talking about, he said, "Hey, we're playing 10-man now. It's kind of fun. You should come out and play." I was like, "I don't have any gear, man. I sold everything. I don't want to go through that." And then like a few days later, a care package shows up at my house, and Spesh had sent me, a bunch of gear. So now I got to go play. And I let that sit for probably a few months. And finally I went out to play at Giant one day. I talked one of my friends into coming with me. He's like, "Yeah, man, I'll go and shoot some paintballs with you." And it was just going to be that.
Yeah.
So I went out there and I played. And I remember the first game, shooting off the break, and I shoot a guy that's trying to run to the corner, and I'm in the back center, obviously, because that's where I want to live at that point. And my brain goes into full paintball mode. That guy's dead, which means there's at least probably one guy here, one guy in the back center, and two guys here. And it just like my brain went on auto drive, and I just like run through, I take the spots, I shoot a couple of guys, and it was like my brain never like stopped playing paintball.
Yeah.
And I just remember like feeling really good. I was like, "Holy shit, man. Like that felt really good." The second game kind of went the same way. The third game, I got confidence now, bro. Like I'm in it to win it now, right?
Yeah.
So I shoot off the break again, and I shoot my guy off the break again, and I'm looking at the corner bunker. I'm like, I'm gonna run to that bunker next, and I'm gonna wrap and shoot. So I go to take off. My brain knows what to do, and my legs were just like, "Nah, that's not happening." And it just stopped. And I fell, and I like crawled to the corner bunker, and my legs seized up, and I got up and I tried to finish the game. And I remember that was funny, is thinking, "Oh man, if I want to play this game, I actually need to like work out muscles I haven't worked out in a long time." So that went on. Had a great day of playing, and I came home. I was telling my wife about it, telling my son about it, and I ended up calling Nick Schaus, who I used to play with on Legacy, and he had moved to Dallas. And then I called my friend Charlie, who used to play on the Smart Parts Factory team, and Sean Salcedo and Colt, we call him Happy Colt, also played for Smart Parts Factory. And we ended up going to, I said, "Hey man, I'm kind of like playing paintball again. You guys want to go play?" And they were like, "Oh yeah, sure." I mean, Sean still plays, obviously. So we went out and played. That was really fun. And then I want to say the third time I played, Brian Brand heard that I was playing, and he said, "Hey, we're practicing at Paintball Fit against AC Diesel and PB Fit. You should come out. I'd love to see you." So I go out there and I watch him day one. And he said, "Well, why didn't you bring your gear?" I said, "Because what? I'm not bringing my gear. Like, this is a whole different level." And he said, "Tomorrow, bring your gear." So I ended up bringing my gear and played a couple of points with them. I may have played with AC Diesel a couple of points also, because Ryan Gray was coaching at the time.
Yeah.
And that was a lot of fun. And I remember going home telling my wife about it again. And then it was that day is when it really clicked. My wife said, I have not seen you get this excited about things in a long, long time.
Yeah.
I was like, what do you mean? And she said, I don't know. You just got this like glow, in your face. Like you feel energized. And my son agreed. He said, yeah, you're like on one right now. You're super happy. And then I thought about that night, and I, remember thinking like, man, they're right. Like, I really do feel happy. Like, this is fun. This is a good time being able to reconnect with people. And that was all she wrote, man.
Wow.
And I got sucked all the way back in. And now I'm playing tournaments again and playing a lot. But I'm having a really, really good time doing it.
Yeah. Wow. That's, you had mentioned that like when we had that conversation of USXBL, like the goals are completely different now, versus when you were playing with Bob and the pro teams back then. What are the goals that you have now versus what you had back then?
So it's different now, right? Because when I first got back in the sport, I had no expectations. To me, I was just going to go out there on a weekend and just have fun. But now it's kind of, now I'm playing tournaments. So I think, to be perfectly honest with you, to be candid and honest, my ego took over first, saying, hey, I'm watching all these guys. I could still do that. I could still play pro if I wanted to. I could still compete. I mean, I'm in pretty good shape for an old man. Jiu-jitsu has definitely, and fighting has kept me in shape. Yeah. So I think first my ego is telling me, you could probably do this again and play pro again. But then it quickly started to shift, because I had a conversation so I'm going to jump around a little bit.
Go for it.
After World Cup, it was actually kind of leading towards World Cup last year. I've had a few teams that contacted me. At the time, I'd gotten a couple of tournaments under my belt. I felt like I was playing pretty good or better. And I had a couple of teams reach out about possibly playing higher level paintball again. And it kind of resonated. It was kind of in the back of my mind a little bit, but I was also playing with a bunch of friends. I was playing with Nick Shows. I was playing with Charlie and Rory and Happy Colt, playing with Sean Salcedo a lot. So I knew the playing paintball with my friends is really making me happy. Yeah. So I kind of went through 2024, jumping around different teams, just kind of finding what I want to do. I played with Aftershock quite a bit, for 10-man and things like that. Todd Adamson was one of the first people that really welcomed me into the Aftershock family. And that meant a lot to me, obviously. But now, so leading to after World Cup, we had won Masters X Ball, and then I played 7-man and 10-man, and we did really well there, and we won the X Ball event, and that was the last thing in my paintball career back then that I've never been able to do, is just win at World Cup. And granted, it's not pro, but
doesn't matter. It's World Cup.
Well, that's the thing, right? I realized I've won a lot of big events before.
Yeah.
And winning Masters X Ball, the celebration, the happiness with my team felt exactly the same as when I was winning in the pro level.
Yeah.
I still got that satisfaction. I still, had that happiness, same type of happiness. It doesn't matter which level it was. So after World Cup, I had a couple of teams reach out to me. One made a pretty solid offer of playing pro again. I guess they had watched me play, and they kind of, really wanted me to come out and play. They thought I still had it in me. So my ego started to take over a little bit, and what ifs. And I went home and I talked to my wife and my son about it. And my wife is amazing at giving me advice, but this one I'll credit to my son, actually. So I told him, hey, this is on the table. This is on the table. What do you think? And he said, well, let me ask you this. You said you wanted to come back. One of the regrets you had playing paintball is you never got to play with the B-Slap kids, because I was pro and they were division. And now that you are, why would you want to take that away from yourself? He said, if you go back to play pro, what would you be accomplishing that you didn't accomplish back then, other than saying, I did it at 50? He said, but now you have an opportunity to play with your friends, which is what you've always wanted to do. And you can play local tournaments. Because I think at the time I was ranked D3 when I first came back. And then when I turned 50, I went down to D4. And then after Cup, I skyrocketed back to D3. Sure. So I really thought about that. And yeah, so the goals have kind of changed for me, because I don't want to play pro anymore. I don't think I have that need anymore. I don't feel like I really have that to prove to myself anymore. Where most paintball players want to play as good as they can, because one day they're hoping to be in the pro leagues. And then when they get into the pro leagues, they're hoping to win an event. And then when they win an event, they would hope to win a series championship. There's always something, right? It
keeps going, yeah.
It just keeps going. But I've done all that. And yeah, I think now my goals, I'm still competitive as fuck. So I always want to win, but my goals now are like memories. Yeah. That's the most important thing to me now. Like World Cup, like I said, I won rings and medals and things like that. But when I look back at World Cup, my like really happy moments is like I got to play with somebody I looked up to forever and never got to meet for whatever reason, but I got to play with Weasel with Aftershock, and that was cool. That was really cool, to just have the conversation with Weasel. And then now we've really become really good friends. Played with him again at Tampa, and just had good conversations with him. Being able to play with people like Todd Adamson and Mike Paxson, Speedy, LP, all these dudes that I just competed against, and now we're just kind of playing together and like making these new memories. Those are really fun. That's kind of what I'm in it for now. I still want to win and I want to be competitive, but I think I'm like making up for not appreciating the fun times more and just being too competitive back then, to like, that's what I want to do now, is make memories and get to know people and have conversations with people.
Yeah. What a beautiful, like full circle moment to your career that's still, of course, going and evolving, but to realize like, hey, I didn't have this in the past and I want to fulfill that. And like, look at how much joy it's bringing you, almost more than winning at the highest levels.
Oh, I mean, a lot of pro players are going to hate me for saying this, but I'm having more fun playing paintball now than I think I did maybe the last couple of years I played pro paintball. Yeah. Just I don't have the stress of traveling for practice. I don't have the stress of like being away from my family and just like being a zombie through airports. Now I just like, I do my shit. I go to work and, I run my business, and on weekends, my homies call me. They're like, yo, 9:00, first ball shot. I'm there. We have fun. We go to tournaments, and we just play some paintball. It's been a really good time.
Wow. What a great full circle moment, your career so far. I think, a lot of people back in the day knew you as like, the 187 killer and like this hard-nosed guy who just didn't take shit from anybody.
Yeah.
What is it like being back in the game? Like, do you still feel like you carry that? Or like, do you talk to about what is it like to have that identity and now maybe not having that?
Oh, that's a good one. Sure. Like first and foremost, I'm just a completely different person than I was, in my late 20s and 30s. I mean, I'm older and wiser now, and I've had a lot of like self work, hours and hours of therapist to get me to where I am now. Yeah. But sure, I'm still a dude, I still have an ego. So yeah, that was a worry even just coming back first, are people just going to think I suck now? I was really, really fast back then. I was super aggressive, and I was kind of an asshole back then, to be honest with you. Paintball kind of got me out of my gang days. So I still carried a lot of that attitude back then, hence the whole 187 thing. But I told you, I talked about earlier about Ryan Brand inviting me out to one of their practices.
Yeah.
And when I finally put my gear on and I was about to play, I remember being nervous because like, this is a whole different level. Like, getting dressed, people are like, holy shit, man, we got OG Gerald in the pits. I can't wait to see you out there. So now I'm feeling a little bit of pressure.
It's a lot of pressure. Yeah.
Yeah. And then my dumb ass shows up with like an old school Philly 187 jersey. So like that probably didn't keep anything low key.
Putting the persona right back on.
Put it all right back on. And all these people were watching me. But Alex Martinez probably doesn't even realize he made an impact on me that day. But right before I played the first game with them, Alex tapped me and he said, hey, have fun. Don't worry about what you used to do or what people used to think you are. Don't put that pressure on yourself. Go out there and have fun with your friends. Go play some paintball. And that was like an exhale for me, because he said something like, you don't have anything to prove to anybody. And I was like, yeah, you're right. I don't have anything to prove to anybody. Like, I just want to play some paintball. I just want to have some fun. But yeah, of course, I still, at tournaments, people surprisingly still approach me quite a bit. Like, hey man, I used to watch you. I molded my game around you. I wear this number because of you. Things like that. So at times, I do still carry and appreciate that people still resonate like the 187 number to something that I did a long time ago. I'm sure I'm not the only person that ever wore that number, but people seem to really know me about that.
For sure.
But then I've come to the realization that like that doesn't mean I have to be the 187 like hardcore dickhead, blah blah blah. I just got to be like the 187 that they maybe wanted to meet one day and still be like a cool dude to talk to. Right? Like if you need some paintball advice, I can give you some paintball advice. If you want to chop it up about some other shit, I can do that too. So maybe just like the pressure of not being standoffish with people, because it is still really weird for me when people come up and recognize me still from back then. But I just tell myself like, as long as I'm very appreciative when people do recognize me, and I just want to like have a conversation with them and let them know that, I appreciate, whatever, for them telling me that I had some type of impact in their life.
Yeah. I see a lot of pros go through that where it's like, it's a love-hate where like when fans come up to them, like, fans are dreaming of that moment of like, I can't believe I'm about to meet my hero. And they're just like spewing all these things of like how much you mean to that person. On the flip side of it, like you just want to know, I just want to know about you. I just want to talk. I just want to have a conversation.
Yeah.
Like it's this weird kind of dynamic that I think pros go through.
Well, especially for me, because the people that do recognize me aren't young kids.
Yeah.
They're like grown men. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That talk to me and it's and tell me about like, oh my God, man, I saw you do this one day, and I was watching an event and you pulled off this move and I've never seen anybody do that, or blah blah blah. And I'm looking at this grown man, I'm like, holy shit, man, like that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
But it's different when it's like like a 19-year-old or a 20-year-old kid that comes up to you, because
Sure.
I'm a dad, so I can kind of relate to that. But when it's grown men to grown men, we already talked about I'm kind of bad at taking compliments. I'm working on it too. So that does seem a little weird at
We got
times.
this together. We'll both work on receiving compliments.
Oh man, let's do it. We'll just keep hyping each other up every week and just accept it.
Yeah, totally. We need to. It's something that, I think as long as we keep working on that, we'll keep practicing it together.
That's right.
Yeah.
Iron sharpens iron, or whatever that is. Steel.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Iron sharpens iron. You're right.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
Talk to me. I think a lot of people may not know, because if they look at your Instagram page, it's a lot of tattoo work.
Yeah.
And you had mentioned it. You had transitioned to putting down the paintball gun and picking up the quote unquote tattoo gun. Talk to me about what that's like and that whole entire journey. Because what I've noticed from you and from talking with other pros is you have to put so much of your life into playing professional paintball. Like it becomes an obsession, right? Like it's a form of a release. It's a form of, I always blank out on the word. This is like the third episode where Yosh said it. He's like, when I'm on the field, it's meditation. It's forced meditation where I can't think of anything else except for this one job.
Sure.
And it seems like tattooing, I would imagine, is similar.
Very, very similar. Yeah, I know what you're talking about, that Yosh might be trying to say. My jiu-jitsu coach used to tell me that jiu-jitsu is like the most dynamic way to meditate. And it's true, because when you're in that moment, when you're rolling or when you're sparring with somebody, you literally cannot think of anything else but what is going on at that moment, right? Yeah. And paintball is the same way. So sure, that's a very good way to put it. Tattooing is kind of, I really want to think about this and say this correctly. I don't think it's like that, because, especially now I'm an established artist, most of my clients are sitting 8 to 10 hours at a time. So it's like, we talk a lot, right? So you get to know that person quite a bit. And as you can tell, I'm a talker. Yeah. I'm a very social person, but I don't think it really has that like dynamic way of meditating effect for me. But tattooing has taught me how to be more social also. And I credit tattooing to bringing out the positive Gerald that I have now, because paintball, this is going to sound bad, but it's not meant to. Paintball brought out like the aggressive Gerald, right? Which is the era that I was just kind of coming off of.
Sure.
And going into paintball. So it molded just right. Like I was kind of this thug in my teens and 20s. And then I jump onto Oakland Assassins, where there were a bunch of thugs and crazy dudes. So I was like, I fit right in, man. So I can play paintball. This is a cool thing to do. But then getting into tattooing kind of tamed me a little bit. And it really taught me how to get to know people on a deeper level, because if you're sitting with somebody for 8 to 10 hours, you kind of have to, right? And it gave me an appreciation for people. And for whatever reason, a lot of clients like to tell me their problems because it is a very intimate thing that you're doing for such a long periods of time, that it kind of helped me with my depression too. It's like, man, here's this guy who I think really has his shit together. You know, he owns a bunch of companies, obviously has way more money than he knows what to do with. Probably the guy that a lot of people would look up to and want to be
Yeah.
at some point in their life. And then he tells me all of his baggage. I'm like, oh, bro, you're just like me. We're all just like some broken ass dudes, and just trying to get through life. You know, and that gave me the ability to have these conversations and to open up with people, being in that industry.
Yeah, it's like a beautiful kind of a full circle moment where like you were going into this as that kind of closed off person, but this almost forced you to like, hey, I have to open up. And
Yeah.
now you're able to give that gift to your clients when they're, you know, venting to you. You can like help talk them through what they're going through because of everything that you've had to go through.
Sure. And just giving me an outlet to express myself is very important too, right? Like just through my art, like not just tattoos. I like to, obviously, you can see back here, I do a lot of fine art drawings and I paint and I do a lot of those things. But tattooing and just being an artist in general really helped me express myself. So if I'm feeling gloom, I have this like sketchbook at home that nobody will probably ever see. And I draw on it when I'm feeling really dark. And some of the drawings that are in there is probably pretty scary for a lot of people, but like it gives me an outlet to get it out of my brain, you know, and then now I can look back and when I'm having dark days, or really when I'm having good days, I'll kind of look back at some of those drawings sometimes and, you know, look at a specific drawing and say, man, you were almost going to quit. Like when you drew that, man, you know, you were in a very, very dark moment and you didn't think there was going to be a light at the end of the tunnel. But look at us now. We got through it, and you're okay, man. You know, and that's what I like to tell people, man. I've been through some real dark shit in my life, like dark moments of depression where I didn't think I was going to be able to get out of it. But somebody at some point in time, you know, saved me from doing harmful things to myself. God obviously was the one that's looking out for me the most. But you can get through it, man. Like, it's not that bad. It's going to get better. It really will.
Yeah, that's, man, I love that answer because I do a lot of journaling now, you know, like written form. And when my mom passed, like I journaled every single day about like what I was feeling, what I was going through, and just so much of it. But like now I'll go back and I'll read some of those entries, and it's a form of like, holy shit, like I went through that and like I got through it and it's okay. And it sounds like with your drawings that's the same. It's almost like journaling for you where you're going back through these dark images like, man, yeah, where was I at that time? And I did get through that. So it's almost like a power that you're giving yourself to go through hard times.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm at a point now, fortunately, where when I have those dark days, and I still do, you know, I
Everyone
still have
has
those
them.
dark moments, that I can at least tell myself that this is just your depression, man.
Yeah.
Nothing's really wrong. This is just your depression. This is how your brain works, and write it out. Tomorrow's might be a better day. If tomorrow's not, it's going to be the day after that. Maybe sometimes it takes a week or two, but I am pretty good about telling myself now, oh yeah, man, that's, you know, I kind of downplay it a little bit. That's that depression shit, man. You know, let's write it out and see what happens.
Yeah, not that I'm a professional by any means in this, but I've heard that from a lot of people is if you label or give a name to what you're going through, whether it's, you know, depression, anxiety, whatever it is, if you say, oh, that is my whatever it is, it helps you humanize it and you deal with it on a much easier scale.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think what you're doing is very important because that's what helped me, right? Like listening to other podcasts and people that I looked up to, hearing them talk about their problems. Like, man, I would have never thought that about Mark Cuban. You know, I would have never thought that about Joe Rogan, or like some of these people that I listen to, or, even watching the podcast I was telling you about, like Oliver, like, oh, Oliver was such a winner. And then I think I heard him talk about, like, in his 20s, he's like, well, now what? I did everything. Now what? I'm barely in my 20s, but like listening to those guys, thinking they're at the highest, pedestal that I put those guys on, and then to hear that they're broken too, I'm like, oh, all right.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong about me being broken.
Yeah, I'm going to butcher this, and I can't think of what maybe it's called sabi or wasabi, or there's something. There's a form of, it's either Japanese or Chinese art where putting together like broken, like a vase that's broken, seeing all the cracks in it, like they'll paint it a certain way, and that turns into a beautiful art piece in its own from all the cracks.
Oh, yeah.
There's some type of name that's like a thing. And I've heard that before, and that really resonated with me, because like when you see, this beautiful vase or this glass structure and it breaks, and then they put it back together, it almost has more of a beauty to it, because you can see all the cracks and how it all kind of fused back together.
Sure.
So it's a nice way to look at, yeah, we're all broken, but that's a good thing. Like we're working on those things.
Sure. I mean, that's kind of what my sketchbook is, right? It's a broken mess. And maybe one day when I'm not on earth anymore, somebody will look at it and, look at it as art. But I get that, I look at some of those drawings and think like, man, I don't ever want to show somebody this drawing, but sure, it could be a form of art for somebody.
Yeah. So like, man, we may have to link up for a tattoo. Since I started this whole photography thing, I've thought about, like, I wanted to cement it some way. I wanted to do something with like a camera photography, but I haven't quite like landed on it yet. So maybe you're the person that to help me through that.
I'd love to, man. I'd love to do it.
That'd be a fun session.
That sounds dope.
Yeah. Man, I've got a few more questions for you.
Good. I'm having a good time.
Same. This has been incredible. What are some things that you're looking forward to doing in the sport? Like, you're back playing USXBL, you're back playing with some local guys. Is there anything else left in the sport that you want to do besides having fun?
I have a goal that I think I've set for myself that would be cool. I would love to be, if an opportunity ever comes up, I would love to represent the USA in like the Masters division that they have. And I remember that going on last year, and I was thinking, man, that would be cool, for me to be able to do that. I wasn't able to travel overseas when I was playing pro at the time, even though I had a lot of opportunities to do it, because playing 10 tournaments, 2 practices in between, I just like could not justify leaving my family more to go overseas to play, But yeah, that's something that would be cool if given the opportunity to represent the USA. That means a lot to me. That would mean a lot to me to do. I've also thought about, just being an artist and being a design nerd. If someday maybe I want to get in the paintball industry, that one I'm still kind of not really sure if I want to do. Maybe I don't want to make paintball a business and just keep it fun.
Sure.
But, as an artist, I think those things always linger around. And then
how to tie those two.
Yeah, kind of tying those two. I mean, obviously, I have some really good ideas, but I'm just not sure if I want to mix business with pleasure again. And then, I don't know, lastly, I think at some point in time when I'm not really playing as much anymore, I'd probably really like to coach. It's something I've always enjoyed back in the day, coaching the B-Slap and the Smart Parts Factory team. I've always really enjoyed doing that. But for now, I don't want to do that. I just want to enjoy playing paintball and making memories with my friends.
Yeah. I love it. Those are incredible goals to have. And I think that Team USA one is probably closer than what you think it is. I think that's something that you can definitely do.
We'll see. I think I got a couple more years left in me. I mean, I do feel like I feel very competitive. I feel good. I've been able to keep my injuries to a minimum, which, I'm older now, so injuries do happen. I have learned to manage them a little bit better than like last year. I got injured a couple of times, and I think I was just trying to do too much or wasn't really stretching the right muscle. But yeah, man, I don't know. Right now, I just really want to make as much memories in paintball as possible and not make it stressful.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, it's all about, I tell people every weekend, because I'm at my field almost religiously every weekend, and, they'll have a bad point or something, and I'll be like, hey, don't worry about it. I made it look cool. Like, I got a cool shot of you diving. And it's like, you're not going to remember getting shot. You're going to remember that picture. Yeah. It's all about that memory. So it's cool to hear that that's where you are in your journey, is making those memories.
Well, and you shouldn't be 50 years old and having those goals too, right? Like I could say that. I mean, that's the advice I give 100% of all the players playing now. Like, yeah, you're playing competitively, whether you're playing, D5, 6, whatever the lowest level is nowadays, all the way to pro.
Yeah.
Like, you got to enjoy what you're doing, because someday it's just not going to be there. You're going to have to step away from the sport, and you might have a lot of regrets if you're not really enjoying the moments. Because I look back at my career back in the day, I don't really remember like this really cool move that I did, or I got to do this or win this. I remember very like important things to me are things that nobody else was probably there to witness. Like one of my coolest, this is not really coolest, but one of the most honored things that I remember I was a part of is the day Bob Long told the team that he was retiring.
Wow.
And I remember that moment vividly. We were at Bob Long's house about to practice, and we were at the shop where they build all the intimidators, and we were all kind of around, and Bob like got everybody around and told us, I don't think it's fair for me to play anymore. We have faster, younger players. I'm just getting older. I'm just going to coach now. And like tears are coming down his eyes. And I remember he said, your heart never gets old, but your body does, or something like that, which is a quote that he said on one of the Dirter videos, repeating it. But like that moment, right? Like the whole team was crying, people are tearing up, and it was just us. We just like had a moment, and it was like Oakland Assassins, the toughest dudes around, just having a kind of a tear fest for a second, and then just thinking like nobody else was here for that, and I got to be here for that. Those are the memories that I remember. Anyway.
Yeah. Wow. That's this like such a cool thing about, paintball nowadays is there's so much content out there that not a lot of moments don't get captured.
Yeah.
So to have those moments that are special and near and dear to your heart, where like no one is going to see that or know about that, like those are some pretty powerful moments to still have in your mind.
I agree.
Yeah. So many people, leave the sport, and we've talked about it, throughout this podcast. They leave the sport and they come back, 5, 10, 15, 20 years. Why? Like, what is it about paintball that just keeps bringing people back? There's so many other hobbies out there that people could do. Why paintball?
That is a good question. Sorry, I'm taking long. I really want to answer this question because I've never really thought about why it sucked me back in, I guess, is the question. For me, it was the spirit of the game is definitely there as a competitor. I think is a part of it. But if I immediately think right now, why are you playing paintball? Which is what I did when you asked that question.
Yeah.
These are the words that came out of my mind is Charlie, Nick, Rory, Happy Colt, Luke Staley, Justin. Like, these are guys on my team. And these are guys that, especially Charlie, Nick, Rory, like these are guys I talk to on a daily basis, and we joke around, we text the dumbest things to each other, things that'll probably get us canceled if we ever like saw. But you know, just being funny dudes, every weekend, being together, playing paintball, that's what resonates with me when you ask, why am I playing paintball right now? Those particular men in my life are adding quality into my life right now.
It's like it's a family away from a family in a way, or like a fraternity in a way.
Sure. Yeah. And
that
particularly these guys are, you know, guys I played with or have known back in the early 2000s, you know, and to be able to be like men now and talk about each other's problems, you know, because we have that kind of dynamic now, you know, especially Charlie and I, we both own businesses, and we talk a lot about like, yeah, you know, this happens with my business and this happens with my business. And it's just kind of cool to have somebody to bounce it off of. You know, to be able to talk to like that more. But that's, that was my most honest question. Those were the first words that popped out of came to my mind.
Honesty is the most beautiful thing. So thanks for being honest about it.
Yeah. And if those guys see this, like, I want them to know, like, I really thank them for coming back, for giving me the time of their life, or times in their life to have those moments again.
Yeah, because you can see how special it is for you. You know, I saw it at USXBL. Like after our conversation, every time I'd walk by, I'd look over and like I saw the aura, like I saw the smile on your face. I saw how much fun you were having. So awesome. It's cool that they were able to give you that back.
That's cool. I'm glad you saw that.
Yeah. Awesome, Gerald. This has been awesome, man. Thank you so much for coming on. I've ended all of my podcasts so far with a really cool way to like tie in my guests.
Okay.
And so I ask all my guests at the end of the show a question where they ask a question, and then the next week's guest will answer it, and like they don't know who the next week's guest is.
Okay.
And so last week I had Nigel D'Souza on of 88 Films. He's one of the only film photographers out there, which is mind blowing that this guy is shooting film.
Like
yeah,
movies or like
no, like pictures, like one shot, you know, you wait for it. He has to go home, go into a dark room, like produce films.
Really?
It's crazy.
You got to send these link. I'd love to see some of his work.
Totally. Yeah, totally will.
That's cool. I'm an old schooler, so I'd appreciate that.
He's super talented. And so he's a big movie buff. And his question for this week, without knowing it was you, what are your top 3 favorite movies?
Top 3 favorite movies of all time. 2 of those will be pretty easy. My all-time favorite movie is Tombstone.
Okay.
And it is because of the friendship and loyalty that they showed each other, which, rest in peace, Val Kilmer. He's gone but not forgotten now. But yeah, that's like my all-time favorite. I've seen that movie probably hundreds and hundreds of times.
Love that.
A Few Good Men is probably a pretty close second. The dialogue that they have in that movie is very deep, so I really like that. I like that dynamic that they have. I tend to watch that movie a lot.
Yeah.
And then the third one, there's a few, but I'd probably say like the whole Godfather series is pretty big in my watch list also.
Yeah. I love that.
That's probably pretty good answers.
Those are great answers. Those are like great weekend movies for people to binge and watch too.
Yeah, especially Tombstone, man. And for like what we do in the paintball industry, like who wouldn't want to have a ride or die friend like that, right?
Yeah. I mean, that is paintball. Like you need that.
You need that. It takes a village, man. It takes a village.
Yeah, yeah. Awesome. Well, now you get the joy of asking my next guest a question without knowing who it is. And it could be anything. Like people have asked questions from like, is cereal a super chowder? Your friend Ryan Gray asked a really thoughtful question. I think his was like, who would you want to have dinner with of like a previous deceased loved one? It's like questions have been all over the place.
So for some reason, when you started to talk about that, Bob Long's image kind of came into my brain. So here's what I'm going to ask. How do I want to ask this? Who was somebody in paintball, whether it was a teammate, a coach, some random guy that you met in paintball, that has changed your life?
Wow.
And how? And you should give them their roses.
Wow, that's a beautiful question.
Because there's a lot of people in paintball that I realize now has changed my life.
Yeah.
Obviously, Bob Long being one of them, to be the person that I am today.
That's beautiful. Does Bob know that about you, of like how much of an impact he's had on your life?
I don't think so. I hope one day to have a face-to-face with Bob. I haven't seen him in a long, long time. I haven't seen him since 2007. Wow. I've talked to him more recent than that. I probably talked to Zach more, but I think Bob is just kind of like hidden in the mountains now, being a mountain man.
Yeah, I've heard that.
But I hope one day I get to have that conversation with Bob to tell him like how special he was in my life. There's probably a handful of people in paintball that I hope to have that type of conversation with one day.
I'm going to challenge you. I want you to do one of those a year. So like put your list together and like one person a year, try to tick them off.
I like that.
Yeah, because I think we talk about that a lot, is like, give the person the roses that they deserve. And I think you also deserve to give that to the people that have impacted you in the sport.
You're absolutely right. And and you're right, that I think that's the gratitude that I should have for God blessing me to be back in this sport, is now I get to have those chances to reach out and have those conversations with them.
Yeah, because I think we hear it a lot in just life in general, where you do something so long and then you become like a master in it, and then when you're mastering it, you can give people, like teach them that gift, right, or give them that gift.
Sure.
And so I think you're at a spot now where the people that have impacted you, by you sharing your story with them, that's going to help them in some way too. And maybe that'll unlock something where they then pass something along to other people.
I like that. Takes a village.
Yeah.
We'll start this whole revolutionary movement of just like being nicer to people. Because everybody in paintball just wants to be the mean dude that like fucks people up. But
exactly. It starts right here with you and I.
Yeah. Right here, me and you, brother.
Yeah, very cool. Well, Jared, thank you so much for coming on, and we will for sure be in touch soon for probably a tattoo appointment.
Yeah. Hey, thank you for doing what you do, man. Like I know I've told you this several times since we've talked at USXBL, but what you're doing is very important. You will, if you haven't already, you will save somebody's life doing this.
That's wild to think about. It's absolutely wild.
So
thank you for that. And for for everybody else that's, tuning in on YouTube and Apple Podcasts and Spotify, thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Shellda Podcast, and we'll catch you next time. See ya.
Peace.